You ever think you know someone, like really know them, only to find out they've got a whole other life you never saw coming? That's what happened to me last fall, when my 92-year-old grandpa, Henry Dawson, turned our quiet little ranch outside Waco, Texas, into something straight out of a Tom Clancy novel. I'm Matt, by the way, and this is the story of how a neighborhood bully with a bulldozer got more than she bargained for when she tried to mess with the wrong old man. It all started on a crisp October morning, the kind where the air smells like dry leaves and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. I'd driven up from Dallas to help Grandpa Henry with some chores, mostly me hauling branches while he sipped his paint-stripping brew from a rocking chair, barking orders like a drill sergeant who's earned his rest. He'd been quieter lately, ever since those letters from the Oak Ridge HOA started showing up, whining about his unkempt property. I figured he was just annoyed. You know, some busybody neighbors trying to tell him how to live on land his family's owned since the Depression. Man, was I wrong. Around 10 a.m., I heard engines big ones rumbling up our dirt driveway. Not the usual delivery truck, but something heavy, like it was ready to chew up the earth. Through the pecan trees, I saw flashes of yellow and chrome, and my stomach sank. You don't bring a bulldozer to talk about mailbox colors. Grandpa stepped out onto the porch, and I swear, he didn't move like a guy pushing 93. His shuffle was gone, replaced by this precision, like he was sizing up a battlefield. He leaned against the wall, hand resting on something under his jacket, and his voice hit me like a cold wind. Matt, get inside. No questions, just move. I didn't argue. Something in his tone told me this wasn't the time to play curious. Then the circus rolled in. A gleaming bulldozer, a fancy black SUV, and two shiny cop cars that looked fresh off the lot. Out steps Cynthia Reynolds, Oak Ridge HOA's self-crowned queen, in a blazer that probably cost more than my truck. Her hair was sprayed stiff against the Texas breeze, and she clutched a stack of papers like they were a royal decree. Behind her, three cop skids, really, barely old enough to shave, shifted nervously, hands twitching near their holsters. The bulldozer guy climbed down, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Cynthia launched into her speech, all high and mighty about property hazards and emergency demolition orders, her voice dripping with that fake politeness you hear from people who've never been told no. That's when Grandpa did something I'll never forget. He didn't yell, didn't call a lawyer, just pulled a beat-up old radio from his pocket, the kind you'd see in a war movie, not a Walmart. He pressed a button, rattled off some numbers I didn't understand, and waited. The response came back, crisp and professional, like someone on the other end was ready for this exact moment. And then, holy hell, our ranch turned into Fort Knox. Floodlights I'd never noticed blazed on, lighting up the yard like a rock concert. Razor wire snapped up from hidden trenches, and what I thought was just a creaky old fence turned out to be anchor points for a defense system that'd make a Navy SEAL jealous. In 12 minutes flat, our sleepy little farm was a full-on tactical nightmare. Cynthia's face cracked, her perfect smile faltered, and I saw real fear in her eyes. The cops froze, hands on their guns, but you could tell they were way out of their depth. The bulldozer guy threw his machine into reverse so fast it spun gravel everywhere, but it was too late. Was stuck in a patch of mud that seemed to appear out of nowhere. From inside, I watched through windows I now realized were placed like sniper nests, my heart pounding as Grandpa's radio crackled with voices that sounded federal, not local sheriff stuff. These were people who knew Henry Dawson by name, and they were pissed about Cynthia's little stunt. Later, over coffee that could have fueled a rocket, Grandpa finally spilled the truth. Matt, your folks didn't want you knowing certain things about me, he said, his blue eyes sharp, like he was weighing how much I could handle. Turns out, he wasn't just a farmer. For 25 years, he'd been with the FBI's Tactical Response Unit, handling stuff like hostage crises and armed standoffs that never made the news. The guy who taught me how to fish had also trained half the agents now hunting bad guys across the South. This ranch, it wasn't just home, it was a fortress he'd spent decades building, wired with cameras, tunnels, and enough tech to make the CIA jealous. Cynthia came back the next morning, thinking she could double down. She rolled up with a bigger crew, 5 guys in tactical gear, not those rookie cops, plus the same bulldozer and her SUV. She was barking orders into a fancy headset, acting like she was running a SWAT team. Mr. Dawson, she snapped over a megaphone. You've got 1 hour to comply, or we're leveling this eyesore. Grandpa just smiled, that quiet, dangerous smile I was starting to recognize, and flipped a switch in the basement command center I'd only just learned existed. Lights blinded her crew, barriers funneled the bulldozer into another trap, and his radio lit up with chatter that had Cynthia's team looking like they wanted to bolt. Then the FBI showed up. A helicopter buzzed the horizon, and a voice crackled through Grandpa's radio agent Laura Carter, his old partner, sounding like she'd been waiting for this day. Home base, this is Raven 4. We've got eyes on an unauthorized operation targeting a federal asset. Recommend containment. Federal asset. That's what Grandpa was, even after all these years. Cynthia's guys started backing off, realizing they'd walked into something way above their pay grade. She, on the other hand, tried to run-ditch her own team and sprinted for her SUV, only to find Laura's agents already waiting. The fallout was unreal. By noon, neighbors were filming everything, their phones catching Cynthia's panicked meltdown as she screamed about misunderstandings. A kid with a drone got aerial shots of the whole mess, and by nightfall, justice for Henry was trending. People were sharing stories of HOA bullying, corporate scams, you name it. Turns out, Cynthia and her buddies at Summit Realty had been pulling this crap for years, targeting old folks, forcing them to sell cheap with fake legal threats. 3 of their victims had died after losing their homes, and the feds were calling it elder abuse, fraud, you name it. Grandpa's old training manuals? They were the playbook for busting this whole operation wide open. 3 months later, our ranch was a different place. Neighbors started showing up, asking Grandpa to look over their legal papers, teach them how to spot scams. He started holding weekend workshops, nothing fancy, just folks sitting around the kitchen table learning how to stand up to bullies like Cynthia. The guy who just wanted to retire in peace was now the defender of hill country, helping veterans, farmers, even teachers protect what was theirs. Summit Realty's stock tanked. Their execs are facing prison, and Cynthia? She's looking at charges that'll keep her in court for years, her fancy life shredded by her own arrogance. Sitting on the porch one evening, watching another group head home after one of Grandpa's sessions, he turned to me, his coffee still strong enough to strip paint. Matt, your grandma always said the best teachers show people they're tougher than they think. I spent years chasing bad guys. Maybe it's time I taught regular folks how to fight back. He didn't have to say it, but I knew what he was asking. I'd walked away from the police academy years ago, thinking it wasn't for me. But now, I'm starting to think the family business might be my calling after all. So, here's the thing: what do you do when someone with power tries to take what's yours? An HOA, a shady developer, or just some suit who thinks you're too old to fight back? Grandpa Henry showed me it's not about a G, it's about preparation, guts, and knowing the game better than your enemy. Drop a comment. Tell me your story. Have you ever faced down a bully who thought they had you beat? Hit that like button if you think experience deserves respect, and subscribe if you want more stories about regular people who refuse to be pushed around. I'm Matt, telling this from Chicago, where I'm keeping an eye on Summit's trial. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.